Hey, I'm Ryan here with Alex, and I have no idea what we're talking about today.
I told Ryan to click the record button, and here we are.
I clicked it. I'm here.
Okay, so buddy, are you ready to figure out what we're going to be talking about?
Sure.
It's almost leaning towards opinion, less than conspiracy, but I think it's tied into conspiracy to an extent. That's why I'm bringing it up.
What are we talking about?
Okay.
Hit me.
Okay. I know you feel strongly about this to an extent.
Uh-huh.
So, I believe that we as a society are pre-programmed throughout life through like subtle propaganda. If you look into the definition of propaganda, all throughout our life to believe one thing to fit an agenda. And we kind of touched on that before. But like, hear me out. For an example, I was laying in the floor with Jenna the other night, and we started talking about some deep stuff, and I brought up, I was like, don't you think it's funny how an entire region of the continental United States, the Southeast, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, even up to Kentucky,
Mississippi,
North Carolina, South Carolina, Mississippi.
Spell Mississippi.
Mississippi.
God, I love that.
Okay,
continue.
I stuttered a little bit at the end. Okay, so Louisiana and Florida, all of those states. Tell me why all of those states are convinced that the Confederates were on the good side of history. Think about that.
Huh? What?
Right, like when we were in school, remember when they sent us to school on that one field trip?
And
we went
you mean like back during the Civil War?
Yeah, so listen.
I thought you meant now, and I was like, nobody thinks that.
No. Well,
I mean, they had...
Our generation might not, but if you look at the older generation, they believe that, and there's a lot of people that are in the South. Me and you are progressive compared to a lot of people in the South, but listen, because you have people toting around the Confederate flag and everything and claiming that it's their heritage, but the Confederates did not do well in the Civil War, and they weren't fighting for a good cause.
Well, this for starters, I'm a history kind of guy. The Confederates almost won the Civil War, but they got all the way up in the North, and then I don't know the battle names, but through one battle, the Union pulled it out of their ass and then pushed them all the way back down here and then fisted them. But also, the reason why the South and North got so divided over the Civil War is because the South needed the slaves because they had plantations, whereas the North was more urban, and they had factories and relied more on that stuff. So I see what you're getting at here, where like you're saying someone could have like pinned them against each other, and I guess you're right, because like in a certain sense, like
no, I'm not talking about the North versus the South, dude. I'm talking about right now in current day and age. That creates tension because you have the people who have been led to believe that that's something that they should be completely undoubtedly proud of just because of where they're located regionally in the United States.
That's true.
And we went to So and then we went to a school, and I didn't think about this until I started getting in this conversation. When we went, remember when they sent us on a field trip to Corinth, Mississippi?
Yeah.
And then we learned about the Battle of Shiloh and stuff?
Yeah, that was fun.
They did not talk poorly of what the Confederates were doing in any form or fashion.
That's true.
I started to remember that. I was like, this is interesting.
Well, yeah, okay. I see what you're getting at. Now, so I think for some people it's like a way of like shoving it in the faces of the people who they disagree with. Yeah. Like it's not that like Billy Bob Joe really loves the Confederate States of America and wishes that there was slavery, you know? He just disagrees with the views of more liberal people. So he's like, well, how can I piss him off the most?
Yeah.
It's like, how about I put Confederate flags all over my fucking truck? Yee. And I feel like that's part of it. But Also, like, there's the thing with the statues where they're like arguing whether they should be taken down or not.
Yeah.
'Cause they're part of history, and that's a tough situation because at like one point, you're supposed to learn from your mistakes, and it is part of history. But then there's another point where it's like, well, do they have statues of Hitler in Germany? And so it's a really difficult topic to discuss.
Yeah, so I saved a TikTok. You can keep talking while I try to find it real quick. I thought I saved it to my camera roll, but
What am I gonna talk about?
Today
I had work and
shut up. But I saw something and a guy made a really good point on that, and it wasn't weird in an extreme fashion towards either side. It was just logic. I think this is it. Okay, yeah, it says you should be careful when you cancel historical figures who were progressive in their time but immoral by our standards, because if you eat meat from factory farms, buy clothing from sweatshops, or don't recycle, then your grandchildren will cancel you by the exact same thought process and you'll have no argument. Morality isn't real, it's a cultural device. Treat it accordingly or stop eating meat.
Okay, but then let's go back to Hitler. Hitler, obviously what he did was very wrong, but he believed it was correct in his time.
Yeah, so
he thought he was doing the right thing.
There was a lot of people who backed that because they believed in the Aryan race being superior.
But now it's like kind of sickening to think about what he did.
And we're like, Jesus
not
Christ,
even kind
how
of
could he
sickening,
do that?
It's sickening, yeah. So, do you think that he should have statues up still?
No, I mean he's still left in history, but I don't know. A group of people needs to get down or sit down and talk about it, because I was driving around the courthouse downtown the other day, because Jenna had something down there, and these people, there was only 2 of them, were standing on the corner, and they're like, take down the racist monument. And I was like, and I used to work down at the courthouse, so I was like, where the hell is there a racist monument down here?
Yeah.
And so I circled around 2 more times trying to find it, parked my car, and was walking around, because I very well would have chewed these people out if they were standing out there in pure ignorance. So I walk over, and the only one I can find is this big plaque, and I was about to get pissed, dude, because it had a bunch of police officers' names on it, and like it was just a memorial to them, really.
Yeah,
so
like, was it like officers that had died in the line
of duty, and so
was that what they were complaining about?
No. So while I was sitting there reading it, they walked over, one of the guys, and he was like, hey man, the one we're actually protesting is on the opposite side of the building. And I was like, I've never noticed a statue over there. And he was like, yeah, it's devoted to the daughters of the Confederacy, and it's just praising, their cause and stuff, and it's kind of glorifying the Confederacy.
That's kind of sad, because like I might not know as much as I should know about the Daughters of the Confederacy, but aren't they just like the people who, like, the women that took care of the Confederate soldiers?
Yeah.
Like they weren't necessarily fighting for anything. They were just taking care of they probably didn't even have a choice, They probably were taking care of their husbands or maybe even their sons.
But I do understand it to an extent, because it wasn't just, if it was just aimed at, these women's like sacrifice, in the sense of like being courageous enough to like put themselves at risk during that time, then it would be a different story. I'd be like, dude, come on, like that's excessive. But I agreed with him, because when I went and read the statue, it wasn't just that. It was like I said, it was like glorifying the Confederacy and its causes through the war.
I see.
And I was like, okay, well,
yeah,
I can
that's not
understand
okay.
that. But
yeah, well, okay, another one that's pretty recent is the Washington Redskins. That's another big one, and you're part of what tribe again?
The Cherokee tribe.
Cherokee, yeah. So what are your thoughts of that being part of a tribe?
I've told so many. Sorry. I've told Ryan this before.
Wait, tell people what happened so they know.
What?
In case they just don't know. Like, okay.
So yeah, the Washington Redskins have been around since like the 40s or some shit.
Yeah.
For a very long time in professional football, basically since professional football has been a thing. Mm-hmm. But so Redskins classic team, with all the racial tension in our country right now, there was a supposed call to change the name because it was racist. And it's funny because I told Ryan I could go talk to anyone in our tribe right now, the Achota Cherokee tribe, and I guarantee you no person in that entire tribe, and there's like, I think I'm roll number 3,600 and something, and that was like back in 2016, so there's like officially there's like 5,000 of us. I guarantee you if I asked every single one of them, they'd be like, I don't give a shit. Everybody else doesn't give a shit. My Uncle Dickie, he's real, native. He's brown and leathery and like kind of hunched over, and he's like, bottom lip out. But he, I've asked him before, and he doesn't give a shit. I guarantee you, the people that called for a change with that were some of these people that make me ashamed to call myself a liberal, that are like fighting for quote unquote social injustice. But it's a good thing. I'm not dismissing it. There needs to be a change, and social injustice needs to be
I mean, they mean well.
Yeah, it needs to be addressed. But then you get these people that are like, their ancestors are fucking Irish, predominantly like Irish and Italian, and they're over here and they're like, you know what? I don't like that there's a team called the Redskins. And then all of the brown people are like, the fuck is this guy talking about over here? They're like, this is the only recognition we really have left, like, for people to remember that we're a thing.
Like, what's he on about? He's trying to change our name? Fuck that guy.
Because I personally, my belief, being involved with that and that being my heritage, is I enjoy the fact that there's a professional football team, and I'm not super into watching the NFL, but named after I'm not dark, but my complexion is red. Like, I've got a reddish complexion. Like, Ryan can look at me right now and say, yep.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. I don't find that derogatory. And I've talked to other people, and they don't necessarily find it derogatory. The thing that's sad is that the government has pushed all these people onto this limited space, like these reserves and stuff. And then they're like, I don't know. I feel like their thought is kept in mind through representation and things, kind of like professional football. But then now it's like you take that away, and it's like, okay, they're just going to sit on the reservations, and if you're going to try to get rid of every little single thing, like representation or something you think is a misrepresentation, then what's going to happen?
They could just name the team like the Indians, or even if that'll probably be too much for them too, because they're not technically Indians.
Yeah, didn't they change the Atlanta? No, it wasn't the Atlanta. Isn't it the Chiefs that have like an Indian as their?
No, they have an arrowhead as their.
No, not in NFL and baseball. There's some. I don't know if there's. Okay, there's not. If there's not Chiefs, there's some team in baseball that has. I don't keep up with
the Braves, sports. The Atlanta Braves.
Is theirs an Indian? Because I feel like I heard. Yeah. I feel like I heard something about that.
Did they change the logo?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not surprised. Yeah, or they can even call them the Native Americans. The thing that really pisses me off is that these stupid people couldn't come up with a new name, and they had months to do it. Like, we were in quarantine for many months.
Yeah.
They couldn't come up with any name. That's stupid. Like, how there's so many things you could name the team. Like, if you don't want to name it after the Native Americans, name it after like anything else. Name it after an animal for all I care. But like, I don't know. People, in my opinion, get too caught up on technicalities when we could be working towards better things. But back to the conspiracy, and to wrap it up, you were saying that your conspiracy is that you think that people have been brainwashed to believe certain things.
Yeah, and so it's like when we talked about the media pitting people against each other. So I believe that there's people in places you wouldn't think of that feed into that. That's not media based. Like, I believe that there's someone high up in our school systems as a southeastern region that pushes textbooks that are just slightly altered to where it almost glorifies things like that. And then I feel like You know, and people look into this. If you're someone listening to this and you're still in high school, if you have a friend in the South, compare y'all's history textbooks, because I'm generally curious, because I feel like that's a thing, because I've heard people have arguments, and I had a friend in lacrosse that went to school in Indiana, but then transferred here, and we had conversations sometimes, and he always made fun of like the whole yee culture down here. But
well, unrest builds uncertainty, and it gets people focused on each other instead of other things that we could be focused on. Yeah. We talked before about how the government most likely is hiding, you know, a lot of different things, whether it be technology, or if you think they're hiding aliens, which is a possibility. I mean, anything's possible, but they're hiding things, and they have their own agendas, and if people weren't busy fighting each other, they'd have a lot of free time to focus on the government. And people, like our nature, the way we are, we're always going to be mad about something and at someone. And so if they make us direct our anger at each other instead of at them, then they're in good shape. They don't have to worry about anything besides putting out the fires that you guys are setting on each other's homes.
Yeah. But so in conclusion, I'll say one thing to take away from the conversation that I had with Jenna the other night is I brought up the fact that comfort, people a majority of the time choose comfort over progress. So because it's easier, and she even admitted to that, because she was like I kind of, you know, she was like, I feel like I kind of do that. Like, what's the point in, you know, thinking so heavily about all these different things when you can just like accept things for as they are and, you know, live a happy, comfortable life. But that's the opposite of what we need right now, because another thing that falls into being in comfort, it sounds weird to say, but is hate, because it's a lot easier to hate and accept these conclusions that are being like fed to you rather than to question things, because when you start to question things, it gets a lot deeper, and people don't want to take on.
You have to think and not be comfortable.
And then people don't want to take on that burden. But anyways, I think next week there's this guy I have as a source, and he has a theory that an ancient civilization,
Atlantis,
like aliens,
Atlantis
lived on Easter Island,
or Atlantis,
because they figured out the heads are not just heads.
They represent the giving of head. There's a lot of cool things, actually, now that you mentioned that. I remember they found, like, in a tomb somewhere, a buried alien, like, in Egypt. Do you remember that story?
Yeah.
That was, like, a billion years old.
That was the other thing.
Like
I'll say this last thing before we get, like, off topic on completely different things. Did you see that thing where a lady, it went viral, and a lady, I think in, like, late 1980s, or early 90s, she took a McDonald's hamburger and put it in a shoebox and put it in her closet to preserve it, and took the things that would obviously rot off. She left the cheese, the meat, and the buns, I think. And so she left it.
Meat would rot too.
No, listen. So just the base, I guess, is better words to choose. So she put it in there. It sat in there for 20 years, dude, and she pulled it out. And it looks exactly the same. Like, you can tell that everything's like hardened and stuff, but there's no mold or anything. And the McDonald's came forward and released a statement, and they were like, well, if you're to keep our food, you know, in an environment that lacks moisture, it's not gonna deteriorate. And then immediately I think about what the fuck happens to mummies then? Because they're preserved to an extent, but they fucking deteriorate, and they're in a moisture-free environment because they're encased in tombs. So that's flawed logic. You can't say because there's lack of moisture that it can't deteriorate at all.
In other news, if you're in an apocalypse and you run out of MREs, which, if for those of you who do not know what that is meals ready to eat. You can always go find some McDonald's, and it'll do just the same job as the MREs.
Yeah.
So there's your survival tip for the day. Hope you guys gained some knowledge from this Conspiracy Theory Thursday. If you guys would rather us talk about something else next week, let us know. If you guys want to talk about the Easter Island heads, you can say give us the head, Choccy-Milkmen, and we will do that for you. And other than that, we will see you guys next time.
See you, baby girls.